Behavioral Health Division. Don't let the game play you. For more information on problem gambling prevention and treatment resources, visit opgr.org. By Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration, in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com. Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, within winning distance. Audi Wilsonville, offering unmatched service to help you find the perfect car. Online at AudiWilsonville.com. Laurelhurst Market, more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. By Unitas Community Credit Union. Join the team at Unitas Community Credit Union to help you reach your financial goals. And by Langdon Farms Golf Club. There's no better course in the Northwest for year-round golf. Book your tee time at LangdonFarms.com. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Buckley and Will Ortner. The Ducks Postgame Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan.
Welcome into the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show for the 9th consecutive time this season, and for the 3rd consecutive week as number one. A victorious edition of the Postgame Scoreboard Show. The Ducks winners 38-17 over the reigning national champion Michigan Wolverines. They haven't looked the part this year, but nonetheless, the Ducks go into the big house. They take care of business. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz here with you tonight. Fellas, how we doing?
Doing just fine. I mean, that was a nice way to cap off the win for Oregon, finding a way in the final minutes to make sure, for whatever reason, when you could have kneed the ball out, you score a touchdown to really emphasize that you just dominated Michigan all day long. Beautiful.
Beautiful indeed. Lots to get to from this game, because I think for the first time we saw some serious obstacles for this team, at least on the road. There hasn't been a lot of pushback so far this season, but today some things that the team had to overcome. Injury, special teams gaffe early on, and going into an opponent's venue that has 100,000 plus there pulling for the national champs, or the former national champs, reigning national champs. It's still a tall order, even if you're the number one team in the land. And Will, we often talk about whether things look the way they should. I think it's inevitable things don't go perfect when you're on the road, but how do you evaluate this game start to finish for the Ducks?
There are things that you need to fix, obviously, but I felt like for the most part, you took care of business. Like, there was never really a point in time in this game where you were worried about Michigan coming back and winning. I mean, the only reason that it was tied after 0-0 is because you had a freshman punt returner who's in because Tez Johnson gets hurt.
Yep.
And he makes a freshman punt returner mistake. He should have just, hey, fair catch the ball, move on. But of course he's not going to
catch it clean.
And he did. But of course he's not going to do it. It's like the minute that you give a wide receiver the opportunity to throw the football, they're going to throw it every single time. Doesn't matter if the guy's double covered or if it's easier for them to run for the first down, whatever. He's going to just try and make a play, which I can appreciate. Aside from that turnover there, Michigan going down and scoring, you were in front the whole time by multiple scores. I felt like you ran the ball well. Jordan James had 117 yards on the ground. I felt like you were going to be able to beat this Michigan team on the edges. I thought going into the game it would be with Evan Stewart, who he did have an incredible catch. Unfortunately, it didn't count. And then he had an incredible drop that counted as a catch. Yep. So good for him. But because of the Tez Johnson injury, he now gets more of the focus, so that leads to a big game from Trayshawn Holden. They just didn't have a secondary in Michigan that was going to be able to keep up with you. And because you scored early and you scored often in that first half, you got a big lead, and you made Warren Davis try and throw, or Davis Warren, excuse me, and you're not going to win that game as Michigan. You are not going to win a football game where you have to throw. If Michigan is going to win a football game, it has to be close, and they have to run the football, and Oregon got them out of it.
Yeah, as a Ducks fan, once that was a 2-touchdown margin,
it was over.
I didn't have any thought that they weren't going to win that football game. Is it annoying when Michigan scores again? Sure, but it felt like this was the kind of game that, and it's. But the roles have been reversed before. Even in the last 2 times that Oregon beat Michigan, Michigan had all the dudes and Oregon had some of the dudes, and they found a way to make it work. Mm-hmm. And those roles are reversed now. Oregon has all the dudes. Michigan still has plenty, but they did not have enough to compete today. And we ended up seeing, I think, the product, and we'll talk more about this as well, like just the depth, the product of all the personnel work that they've put in the recruiting arena, in the transfer portal. it flashed its brilliance again today, the roster that they've put together, because the next thing I think that is maybe the most significant thing that happened today is the Tez Johnson injury. We'll try to connect with Dusty Harra here in a little bit and see if we know anything about the status of that. I'm sure we will get nothing official, but no idea if that's something short-term or long-term.
Right.
But what we know is that today he was out early, and really the entirety of the rest of the receiving group stepped up. And I thought it was low early. It was some Stewart. You got Holden late. Sadiq got involved. Ferguson got involved. The depth and the ability to kind of next man up, and even if you lose a guy as valuable as Tez, not miss a beat, I think speaks volumes of what they put together here.
100%. I mean, Trayshawn Holden just had an absolute whale of a game. Yeah. And that's really encouraging to see, because he could have easily put his head in the dirt after what happened in the Ohio State game. Like, that's an easy one for a young kid. I made a mistake. Now I just let everything snowball. And it's very clear that Coach Lanning and that staff, they punished him, but they punished him in a way that didn't take him out mentally, right? Like, yeah, it's going to lead to more Justice Lowe opportunities, and Justice Lowe has ran with them, which is great to see from the local kid. But at the same time, you have to make sure that Holden is punished in a way that he knows he messed up and he can never do that again, or even think about doing it again, right? But you can't take him completely out of the game. You can't take him completely out of this season. And so what Trayshawn has done a great job, especially in this game, of is, hey, I'm going to have my opportunities. I have to find a way to make up for the mistake that I had and earn all that trust back. And I feel like he did a good job of earning a lot of that trust back in this game. He had a lot of one-on-one opportunities, and he won. He won against zone coverage. He found where the holes were, sat down in them, and he got passes from Dylan Gabriel, and he caught them all. There were no drops.
Yep.
I thought that Holden had a big game. Now, if Tez Johnson is out for a while, you're going to have to replace him with that middle of the field target. Tez Johnson is great at taking a drag route for turning a 3-yard catch into a 3-yard airtime catch and then getting 20 on the run.
Right.
You need to find that wide receiver who can now fill that role. I felt like in this game, obviously Evan Stewart was able to get open on some deep shots. They just weren't able to connect between Gabriel and him. There needs to be that medium guy. I feel like you have the short guys in the tight ends.
And did
you
we
need
see
the
it?
medium.
Did you think we saw it at the end a little bit with Holden when he kind of split the seam and then he doubled back on the safety? Like,
he had a couple, yes.
That felt a little Tez-esque.
He had a couple, and then it felt like Lowe had the bubble screens. That was like what Tez would normally do, or the tunnel screens, where Tez would get that catch in the tunnel screen, and then he turns it backwards pass into an 8-yard gain. So I feel like they need to find one wide receiver that can do that, or they need to find one that can do the medium. Maybe that's Holden. One that can do the short. Maybe that's Lowe. To replace that injury.
Might be a little tougher for Trayshawn to be that slot guy just because he's 6'3". I mean, I think just size-wise, you're kind of suited better to put like Justice Lowe and Evan Stewart in that position, but I think Holden is probably the more athletic guy there. But can we talk about the mentality that this kid has? And I think that Oregon Duck fans need to have a lot of pride in Trayshawn Holden and the fact that this is the guy that, guess what? You made a mistake, you owned it, and then you showed up and were able to perform like this. You literally had no dip in anything that we saw that Trayshawn was doing in the first 6 games of the year. He came right back and did it all against Michigan today, and it's just so impressive, and it's so far along compared to what the Ducks used to have at every position. So just good mental toughness, and I think Oregon fans should be proud of that.
Yeah, and even today, I think he may not have been a starter until Tez went down, because the previous,
it was Lowe.
So because Lowe was getting fed early, and I didn't see much of Holden on the field. So for him not to even check out of this game, and to continue to push, I think these are the things that you see in championship level teams. These people and personnel care enough about what they're doing to figure it out. And then back to the X's and O's of it. I'll keep banging this drum. Someone you could throw on the slot every now and then, Kenyon Sadiq. Keep feeding that guy. He's a monster. And I think just creates all kinds of matchup problems. So I loved the way that they used their other weapons today in the receiving game once Tez wasn't available. We'll talk a little bit more about navigating life without Tez if that ends up being the case. But let's flip to the other side of the ball for a second, Will. One of the biggest reasons I felt confident about the Ducks in this game is that even when you have hiccups, even when the offense stalls out, they say in football your defense travels, and the Oregon defense, you knew that the Michigan offense was a little bit limited, at least at the quarterback position, but you knew that Oregon, even if Michigan had a few more weapons, was going to come ready for this one. And I think despite maybe giving up a little bit more than you would have anticipated, just yardage-wise and a few more first downs, it was a pretty impressive performance top to bottom.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one guy killed you. Colston Loveland killed you. 7 receptions, 112 yards. Everyone else was kept in check. Your next top yardage gainer is Donovan Edwards at 52 yards.
Yeah.
Like, you had one guy who is going to be a high draft pick. I don't know if he's going to be a first-round guy or if he's going to be a day 2, but he's going to be an early day 2. He's a very good football player, and he got you. He's a matchup nightmare. It's hard for teams to stop him, and it's clear that he had built some trust there with the quarterback, and that's who they were going to find when they needed a big play. Aside from that, you dominated them. Yeah, you didn't get a sack in this game, but you had 7 tackles for losses. You had linebackers that were playing in the backfield. Derek Harmon to start the game just let everyone know, hey, we're not going to be able to run the football his way. When they tried to run that outside zone at him and the guard isn't able to get over the top, Harmon just goes in and he gets the tackle there in the backfield. I can't remember if it was on Mullings or if it was on Edwards. But right away, it's Michigan in 2nd and 15. And so I felt like this defense, they played well, they played fast, they played in the backfield, and there were just a couple of times where a really good football player, a guy who is going to have a shot at being on one of the All-American teams, he beat you. And you know what? That's okay because Michigan has really good players too. Yeah. In some spots.
Yeah. I was watching the game with my stepdad, and he kept getting upset when Michigan would do something good, and he'd be like, "Come on, guys!" with like Oregon. I'm like, they're trying too, and they're also pretty good at football.
Right.
Like, I mean,
right.
No one's gonna roll over for us just because we like the Ducks. But.
I mean, can I push back on that a little bit? Because I think I agree with your dad's sentiment a little bit, just because of the fact that if you look at the numbers, yes, Oregon dominated, but there were a couple of those points, like obviously the first fumble or the only fumble that Oregon had. Ryan Pelham basically allowed a 14-point swing to happen at the beginning of the game, and then in the third quarter, when Oregon wasn't scoring, it was, I don't know, in my mind getting a little tumultuous, like, oh, this is close, and there are 2 key third downs that Oregon allowed Michigan to convert in that quarter alone. So it was just like, in the situations, they let them get almost there, but not quite, which is good. But if I'm a Duck fan, I want to see them dominate. I understand Michigan is a decent team, but they can't throw the ball. They can't. Why let them throw the ball even to one guy? If it's the only guy, double cover him, throw to someone else.
And here's where I think they were. Like, that's how good he is. That's how good Colston Loveland is. Fair. When you go through and you look at the stats, he had half of the catches today. They were 13 of 25 passing, but Davis Warren was 13 of 23. Colston Loveland had 7 catches. They had 165 yards passing. He had 112 of those yards. They had 270 yards as a team total. He had 114. That's how good Colston Loveland is. And you can double cover him. You can do whatever you want with him. Loveland is a matchup nightmare, and that's going to be hard for anyone to try and stop. He's a tight end, remember. He's 6'5", 245. He runs like a wide receiver. There were times where you put Jabbar Muhammad on him, your best cover guy, on a tight end, which I like Jabbar Muhammad in most matchups against almost anyone. I don't know that I love him against a tight end. So there are going to be times where you lose.
And just real quick, who do you think personnel-wise would be the answer for that? Someone like Bossa, or like what's?
No, because he's bigger than Bossa too. Like, you're gonna have to throw a bunch of different looks at him. And to be honest with you, I would have liked to have seen Oregon's D-line win more one-on-one pass rushes. You didn't have a sack. Now, did you get after Davis Warren? Yes, you did, and you made life uncomfortable. And I felt like for the most part, you played in the backfield of that Michigan team. But it felt like on those big Colston Loveland catches, he had just enough time to stand in there, get the throw off, and you're asking a defense to lock down, a top 2-3 tight end in the country right now? Like, that's tough. That's tough. You did your job. He had a couple big plays. I still think that you dominated this game.
I've still got a couple more questions on the defensive side of the ball, and we'll get to those next when we talk to the Ducks defensive back legend Anthony Newman. We'll get to him on the other side of the break. But first, we'll toss it over to Schultze, who has the Ducks game day weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thank you very much, Buck. 52 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 46. Tomorrow, cloudy and a high of 56. It's going to be in the 50s and cloudy in Eugene when Oregon hosts Maryland next weekend.
Looking for an unforgettable escape this fall? Discover Legends Casino Hotel, just a short drive up the gorge in Toppenish, Washington, where excitement meets luxury. Play your favorite slots and table games, enjoy delicious dining at our top-notch restaurants, and unwind in our elegant hotel rooms and indoor pool. With thrilling promotions and live
Ryan Pelham is deep. Here's the punt very, very high. And taking it, trying to get it outside. Now cut it back to the left at the 30. Ball came out. And Michigan has the fumble recovery at the 28-yard line. Pelham had plenty of time to make the grab and then tried to run right. Nope, went back left, got hit, and the ball came out.
This is the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz here with you. Anthony Newman is waiting for us as well. But before we get to Anthony, we need to do our Ducks Game Day secret score.
Ducks Game Day secret score.
The Ducks Game Day secret score is 2. Remember that number 2? That's the number of penalties the Ducks had today. A clean game from the Oregon Ducks. Don't need to remember it's the number of penalties. Just remember that number 2 in the 7 a.m. hour of Monday morning's Dirt and Sprague. Listen for that cue to text in, and if you win, you'll get the $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market. It's more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. Anthony, it wasn't perfect, but it was clean and it was definitive. What did you think about today's victory for the Oregon Ducks?
It was a good team win. The offense played well. Defense played well. They had some mess-ups on special teams. You know, that happens. But the play in the big house, you know, you fly across the country. You're going against, you know, a team that was the national champion last year, and you played well. You really did. There's, you know, the third quarter, yeah, you stumble a little bit. But when you beat a team that bad, when you jump all over them, you hold their rushing attack to under 100 yards, or I think it was 105 yards, something like that. It was good to see the domination of a good football team take care of business like it's supposed to.
Anthony, I felt like the defense played exceptional. Aside from like a couple big-time catches from Loveland, Oregon really shut them down. What were you seeing from the defense in the secondary that helped shut down all the other wide receivers over for Michigan?
Well, you're right. I mean, you know, I don't think Michigan has any good receivers anyway. so they throw to the tight end, and I get that. And that's a good tight end. He was finding the open window. You know, he was going to the green grass, so he did a good job. But the quarterbacks, again, they struggle. You know, you put Orji in the game as a quarterback, he's going to run the ball, so you don't have to worry about him throwing the football. So the secondary, When the quarterback is getting the ball from the center and he's looking downfield and he sees all of his receivers covered up, it's not a zone, it's a man coverage. And I looked at Oregon. They played a lot of man. They're like, okay, we're gonna take your man away. There's not going to be any windows for you to throw to. And then now the quarterback's confused, and he's scrambling to the sideline, throwing the ball out of bounds. He did that like 5 times. Like, what's going on? Now, he doesn't want to throw picks. Well, that's smart. But, and also the play calling for Michigan, I question that a little bit. But, hey, I'm not in their meeting room, so I don't know what they're trying to do. But it looked a little silly to me.
Anthony, when we talk about this Oregon defensive performance today, it seemed like one of the things they did early just to set the tone is they completely controlled the edges and the perimeter. They didn't let any runs get outside. They were turning guys back in. And it felt like they almost forced Michigan to play downhill at them, which was like what Oregon wanted to do. Do you feel like this Oregon defense is starting to set the tone against the offenses that they've played? And how is it that they're able to do that?
Yeah, you set the tone with the big boy up front. Derek Harmon. I mean, the nose tackles, both D tackles for Oregon. Well, let's just talk about the whole defensive line for Oregon and all the backups and the guys who are third string. I don't care who's in the game. The front seven for Oregon, they dominate football teams right now. They really do. Mm-hmm. I mean, they handle their business. Again, Oregon had 7 tackles for loss. That's incredible. You're playing on the other side of the ball. It's like, when the ball snapped, you're seeing your defensive lineman penetrate the offensive lineman and disrupting, the quarterback trying to hand the ball off, or they're trying to do, play action. There's not enough time for play action because you got somebody in your face. That, to me, is huge. You win football games up front. So, and they keep getting better, and the ceiling's still high. They keep getting better, but, man, they're good.
Anthony, when you jump over to the other side of the football, obviously Trayshawn Holden had a big game receiving for Oregon. What was he doing that got him so open against this Michigan secondary?
Find the open window. And again, Michigan was playing zone. So they're dropping back in coverage. And a couple of times when Gable scrambled, it was like, oh, okay, this is the scramble drill. Let me go find the open area. And that's what he did. But at times when they were just running zone and Gabriel was standing in the pocket forever, he's like, okay, well, I'm not open over here. Let me just adjust my route and come over to the open window and just stand here. And he did a great job of doing that. And that's kind of hard. You got to have a connection with the quarterback. You got to play with the guy for a while. And that's why I'm surprised with Dylan Gabriel and the receivers. There's a rapport there. And they only been together for not even a year. And it's amazing because they're understanding each other. They know, okay, well, here's what I need to do for my quarterback, and the quarterback said, this is what I need to do for my receivers, and they do it well.
Speaking of the rapport, we're talking with Anthony Newman here, Duck star defensive back and former NFL vet. Anthony, as far as the star receivers are concerned, the one that had the most rapport with Dylan Gabriel was Tez Johnson. He obviously goes down today with what appears to be a shoulder injury. We'll get more information on that later, but if they do have to miss some time, if the Ducks are facing life without Tez for a little bit, how confident are you in this group's ability to kind of carry the torch without him, or how much of a detriment is it to this offense to not have him?
Well, did you see what Oregon did? They started throwing the ball all over the place.
Yep.
You get Sadiq, the tight end, he's going to get the ball. Ferguson's going to get the ball, the other tight end. Throw the ball to the running backs. Okay, you have, I don't know how many, Justice Lowe, he had a couple of catches. So now you're starting to spread the wealth, and that's harder for a defense to defend because when you know one guy's going to get the ball, you're going to double team him. You're going to take your best football player and put it on him, and then, hey, don't let him beat us. But now when you start spreading that ball all over the place, okay, well, where did he throw the football? Okay, what's going on here? With Dylan Gable in the pocket, okay, and then when he scrambles, he's buying time, so that's even harder for a defense. And let's also talk about the running game. When you run the football, you got to bring guys in the box to stop the run. But then when you do the play action, it just opens up the pass, and now you're guessing as a defense, what do we do?
Anthony, now Oregon is going into the last little stretch of games they have. They have Maryland still left to play. They have Wisconsin left to play. And then, of course, they have UW after their bye week. What does Dan Lanning and crew need to do so that they make sure there aren't any upsets. We've seen some upsets today in the Big 12. There have been some other really close games in the SEC. How does Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks make sure that they don't let that happen with 3 games left to play?
And if it's not broke, don't fix it. So Dan Lanning is telling his guys one game at a time. People tell him, "Oh, you're number 1 in the country." He says, "Who cares?" The team says, "Who cares?" It's not about being the number 1 team right now. Okay, it's after the national championship. That's where you want to do. That's what we're trying to do. So they're taking one game at a time, and it's the old faceless opponent. You don't care who you're playing. You don't care where. You put a turf down. You throw a football in there on a couple of officials, and you blow the whistle and get after it. And that's what Dan Lanning and that football team's doing.
Yeah, this team has it rolling. Anthony, we will discuss it more with you when we get together for Ducks Roundtable on Monday night. That is Anthony Newman. You can hear him every Saturday on Ducks Game Day, every Monday on Ducks Roundtable. Appreciate you joining us, my friend.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Good stuff, as always, from Anthony. We're going to keep rolling here on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show, navigating life without Tez Johnson. And also, we haven't talked a lot about the run game today and Ortner's big uglies up front. Need to get an O-line check-in, and we'll do that coming up next on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. But first, we toss it over to Schultze for Ducks Game Day Weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thanks, Buck. 52 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 46 tomorrow. Clouds and a high of 56. It's going to be in the 50s with some clouds in Eugene when Oregon hosts Maryland next weekend.
Don't let the game play you. Sports betting is popular among
Can still look at throws. and caught. Touchdown, Michigan. And Warren, as he rolled to his right, that's just too much time to make sure somebody doesn't get free in the end zone.
This is the Pacific Office Automation Post-Game Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. Your number one Oregon Ducks improved to 9-0 on the season. They are winners 38-17 at the Big House in Ann Arbor over the Michigan Wolverines today. The defending national champs go down at home. I was listening on the way into Jerry. I can't remember what he said the last home loss was, but it has been a while since Michigan has taken a conference home loss. I can get the number for you, but also wanted to give you one programming note. No Ducks Roundtable this Monday because we have Ducks basketball. So even though I told Anthony Newman I'll talk to him on Monday, I won't. We'll talk to him next Saturday.
Well, you might text him. You never know.
That's true.
He's very reachable.
I could be in touch with Anthony Newman.
He's a very nice guy.
Yeah, and he's available to us, and that's wonderful. Let's get back to the matters at hand in this game, and let's go for our standard O-line check-in here. How did things look from your perspective as an O-lineman, Will? I know that one of the boys went down, Marcus Harper, with an injury towards the end of the game. I heard him saying on the radio broadcast that he was had a knee wrapped with ice at the end. Obviously wasn't going to come back in the game. Don't know the severity of that, but overall, their performance today, what did you like? What concerned you? Anything in between?
First, concerned about Marcus Harper. I mean, he's been your anchor at that right guard position. He gets rolled up on, comes out, he's got ice on his left knee. And the reason that I'm worried about this because that O-line has been basically perfect since the Boise State game. Everything that you could have asked from them to do, they've been doing. They've found a way to make sure that Dylan Gabriel stays upright. They found a way to earn that trust back from Gabriel. So now he's able to go through all of his progressions. He's not just finding one wide receiver and like, well, I better get rid of this ball or else I'm going to get hit. And you've gone up against some serious pass rushing threats. I mean, Ohio State has a couple. Obviously this Michigan, the interior three, they can really get after teams. And I felt like you looked great. So I'd like to see what Harper's injury, like the extent of it is. When will he come back? Now, if you're talking about that offensive line, I felt like early in this game, you were going to attack the edges of this Michigan defense. And so that meant if you were going to run the football, it was going to be a lot of zones or a lot of bubble screens, tunnel screens. And I felt the offensive line was getting out and moving. But when you needed to run the ball in the trenches, Michigan has two of the best interior D linemen in the country, Graham and Grant. They're both going to be early draft picks in the upcoming NFL draft. They're both being talked about as day one guys. They're both being talked about as top 15 guys, which you don't really see from that interior defensive lineman position. So that tells you just how legit those two are. And you ran for 176 yards on them, and it was up the middle after the first quarter. I mean, Jordan James wasn't getting touched at times, just running through people. You only gave up 3 tackles for a loss, and you gave up 0 sacks. I felt like this offensive line played exceptional today.
Yeah, and then just behind them, you mentioned Jordan James and kind of being able to go up the gut towards the end of the game, and even Dylan Gabriel was able to do that.
Wow.
Yeah, but I also want to give the backs some credit because I feel like at this point in the season, they're used to a lot of those holes up the middle being open for them, and I thought their vision was great today. There were a couple times that both of those guys bounced the run outside and didn't force where they initially wanted to go. They were patient enough and had the vision to make that change and gain extra yardage out of it. And, you know, his numbers today aren't that impressive, 11 carries for 36 yards, but Noah Whittington is giving you tough yardage when you need it.
It was in the red zone.
It was in the red zone.
That's where he showed up, man. He found ways to get into the end zone. I mean, the second touchdown, there's no room there. There's no hole there. The offensive line did a good job of staying on dudes, but they didn't open up a hole. He literally did a spin move off his left tackle and then was like, oh, the hole's to the left, and then I have to outrun everyone. Look, as much as I can praise the offensive linemen, and trust me, I'm going to find a bunch of different ways to pump their tires, but in that situation, that's a running back making a lot of other people look really good when they were probably just decent. That's a great run by Whittington.
And you know, it feels like we keep talking about this, but week by week, even if Jordan James outtouched Whittington by about 2-1 today, it feels like a more complete two-headed attack now. That it's fully morphed into something. They are leaning on both guys. They can put either guy into either situation. Both guys have their strengths, but both are able to give you really solid production.
Right. Well, and I want to ask Dusty this, but remember early on in the season, there were some complaints about how this offensive attack was looking in the red zone, especially the low red zone. You know why they've looked so good the last 2 weeks? Noah freaking Whittington is in the backfield, and he's finding ways to score. And you would think that it would be Jordan James because he's more of the power back, but it feels like at least the last 2 weeks, they have gone with Whittington, and he's not necessarily running over people, except for that Illinois safety, but he's running away from people. He's finding different creases that not many running backs are able to find, and that's why he's ending up in the end zone. And I also think that that's why he's getting more of those looks in the low red zone, and you've seen that low red zone offense improve.
You heard Jorgie and Jerry both commenting on his second touchdown today that it literally happened because he found the seam. It was a quick cut by Whittington. I think 3 Michigan players were ready to get him, and Jorgie's like, whoa, if he hadn't made that move, he would have been done. And that's like the different side that Jordan James maybe doesn't give you that Whittington does bring to your offense.
Well, Andy Dirt Johnson played quarterback in high school. We have not yet touched on the quarterback performance today, but Andy did something as the armchair quarterback today that was very impressive. We will congratulate him for that coming up next. But first, we toss it over to Schulte, who has the Ducks game day weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. 52 in Portland right now. The Ducks post-game forecast calling for a low of 46. Tomorrow, cloudy and 56 the high. It's going to be in the 50s and cloudy in Eugene when Oregon hosts Maryland next weekend.
Your home for Oregon Ducks football is KFXX KWJJ HD2 Portland.
Go to the house!
1080 The Fan, an Odyssey sports station. We're back with a complete recap of today's game.
Trips to the right for Gabriel. Turn and hand it off. Trying to find something middle, nothing there. Whittington comes outside. Straight arm. 5-4. Touchdown. No, Whittington.
With the coaches and players you want to hear. Your feedback on the contest. Scores and highlights from across the country. And analysis from your game day crew. This is the Ducks Postgame Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan. Oregon Ducks football on 1080 The Fan is brought to you by Coors Light, Pacific Office Automation, Mods PDX, Victor Rico's Mexican Food, Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, by Zoom Care, Bellagio's Pizza, Multnomah County Behavioral Health Division, Audi Wilsonville, Laurelhurst Market, by Unitas Community Credit Union, and by Langdon Farms Golf Club. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Buckley and Will Ortner, the Ducks Postgame Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz here with you after the Ducks victorious again, 38-17. They beat the reigning national champion Michigan Wolverines and improved to 9-0 on the season. The number one team in the land will certainly be number one again next week. And now we bring in the man who will talk about them first thing Monday morning on Dirt and Sprague, Andy Dirt Johnson. And Dirt, before we ask you any questions, there's some congratulations in order. Are you aware of this? Dirt, are you aware of the congratulations that are in order for you today?
I am, and how about I'm just a genius. This is why they pay me the big bucks around here, dude.
Yeah, going to break, I said, I know you played quarterback in high school, but you did the best armchair quarterbacking you possibly could have today. You called your shot, 38-17. I walked in, there was a Post-it note saying, Dirt says 38-17, and I'm like, he got it. Well done, man.
Look, I owe Dan Lanning and whoever gambled on Oregon today, a.k.a. Jordan Schultz, owes Dan Lanning a major thank you because when they were running down there in the last 5 seconds, I thought for sure they were going to take a knee. There was no point to run another play. And then they ended up doing it. So, hey, what do they say? Good teams win, great teams cover. Today,
That's
Oregon
right.
was good and great in the same afternoon.
Absolutely. I love that phrase. I could not agree more. Let's talk about the game itself, Dirt. Another excellent performance from Dylan Gabriel. It feels like he's got most of the hiccups out of his system now, and every week is just about as reliable as you could possibly expect. Are we looking at the Heisman Trophy winner here?
I mean, he's got a great shot at it. I think this week it was updated. He was the favorite in Vegas. We talked about it on the show. I still would lean Travis Hunter, to be honest with you, just because he's doing something that we've never seen before.
I totally understand that rationale and even support that.
Well, and I think a lot of it will depend on how the season ends, right? Some people wrote off Hunter early in the year because we assumed Colorado was going to be bad. And now, look, Colorado maybe wins the Big 12 and gets the first round bye in the college football playoff. Who knows what happens in the next month. To your point about how good he's playing, man, he was so awesome today. And you consider Tez Johnson goes down on the opening drive of the game, collarbone injury, and how important he's been. It ended up touching on that message that we've had all year, and why this team maybe is different is because of how deep they are. And so Tez goes down. You got Trayshawn Holden stepping up. I think his first 100-yard game in his entire career. Justice Lowe makes big plays. But all of it is due to, one, the play up front, but two, Dylan Gabriel, I think, is playing better at that position than anybody in the country right now. You look at some of the offensive struggles from other teams near the top. Go look at Georgia and their offense today. And that's kind of been the story of Carson Beck's season. He's turning the ball over a ton. So it's a great feeling going into a game knowing he's playing at such a high level. He's seen everything that he could have possibly seen by this point. And because of that and the weapons around him, even if you have a little clunky game in the run game, or maybe your defense isn't as good, it's going to give you a chance to win every single game. He was awesome today.
He had a couple injuries on the offensive side. Also had Harper go down on the offensive line. Are you worried about it? Or I guess we should do more of a 1 through 10. Like, how worried are you about the injuries that are kind of starting to pile up?
I think that the question that I would respond with is, how long-term are they, right? Like Tez, sure. I don't know. Have you guys seen an official word on Tez? I haven't seen anything.
Have not. We're hoping to connect with Dusty here. We'll see if we can get that done.
Yeah, because that would be it didn't look good, right? I mean, he's holding his arm. He's in a sling. He's on the sideline. That's not ideal, but is it something where maybe you're back for a Big Ten championship game? Are you out for a month? Even if you get through that game, Oregon looks like they'll be in the college football playoff. And if you play in the first round, that first game's not till, December 21st. So that's the other thing. I think it depends on if they're season ending or if they're, hey, he's going to miss 2, 3, 4 weeks or be out a month, because I think you can navigate the rest of your schedule with Harper being down potentially. Don't forget Dave Iuli is back. He, I think, dressed last week for the first time this year, and he was a guy they thought maybe could slide into the rotation. We didn't see him come in reserve when Harper went down. But I think that's the tough part with those injuries. If they're season ending, yeah, I think it's a little bit more of a fear factor, because then if another guy goes down on the offensive line, now all of a sudden that fear from the first 2 weeks is back. But I think without Harper and without Tez, if you tell me they're out the next month, maybe not a Big Ten title game, that could be tough, but I think you can win the remaining games on your schedule without those guys in the lineup here in the next couple of weeks.
Talking to Andy Dirt Johnson of the morning show, Dirt and Sprague, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. And Dirt, in that same breath, Oregon goes and takes care of business again. It looks clean. It's definitive. They just take care of business at this point with just 3 league games remaining, and 2 of them really all of them you're going to be heavily favored in. The Camp Randall one's a little bit tricky, but you feel like you should steamroll Maryland. What if any concerns do you have about this team just before the postseason begins?
Man, I don't even know how to answer that right now. I mean,
it's okay if there aren't any. That's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I would say second half scoring, I guess, if you want to raise that concern, that's kind of been an issue for them. You're up 28-10 at the half. You're thinking, okay, you get the ball to start the second half. You had a field goal, you had a touchdown there. The game's over, and it couldn't have gone any worse. You go 3 and out, Michigan goes down the length of the field and scores. So there's a bit of a clunkiness in the third quarter that I'm not sure if the staff has been able to put their finger on. It didn't really affect you a ton in the Ohio State game. You were able to overcome it. So that's really the only game this year where it seriously could have mattered and potentially cost you a loss. But outside of that, man, it's hard right now. They seem so well. They're so balanced on both sides of the ball. Defensively, I thought they were outstanding today. I mean, if you take away a drop punt, Michigan really had maybe 1 or 2 drives that they put together, and then the offense having to come through the injuries and the way that they were playing. Offensive line play and maybe second half play are the only 2 small things that I would circle just to keep an eye on over the next couple of weeks. But considering the opponents, you're not going to get an accurate picture of what you're going to potentially see at the end of the year. And no offense to, Wisconsin or Maryland or Washington, but it just won't be the same challenge that you would get either in a Big Ten title game again or in a college football playoff setting. But to this point in the season, man, to be 9-0, they're checking all the boxes. They're answering all the questions right now. We'll just see if they can stay healthy in the coming weeks.
So then let's talk about, if none of the 3 left teams on your schedule scare you, who scares you in the Big Ten title game? Is it Ohio State? Is it Indiana? Is there a chance that, crazy stuff happens, Penn State gets into that game? Do they scare you? Who scares you in the Big Ten when you have to play them in that Big Ten championship game if you get there?
I would still say it's Ohio State. I think I got a chance to see most of that Penn State-Ohio State game today, and that just looked like the same old Penn State team that's pretty good defensively, struggles to run the ball in big games, and can't find an offense. Like they had a defensive touchdown in that game. I think their offense scored 6 points, and their fans booed them off the field. Like I was rooting for them because I'd love to see Penn State in that game over Ohio State. There's still a weirdness with Ohio State right now, the way they played the last 2 weeks. Yep. Their offensive line has not been great. Their offense can be clunky at times. So I don't look at it as oh my God, you have no chance to beat this team again. But of all the contenders, no offense to Indiana, I know they're playing great. They're blowing people out. We'll find out about them in a couple of weeks when they go to Columbus. And if they win, hey, I would be thrilled to play Indiana in a Big Ten title game instead of having to beat Ohio State again. But I think there's a pretty clear separation after today, what Oregon's done all year, Ohio State getting that win. I view the Big Ten as Oregon, Ohio State, a gap, then maybe like a Penn State, Indiana, and then a gap, and then kind of everybody else jumbled in just a middle average category. So I would still circle Ohio State as the biggest threat to you in that Big Ten title game.
All right, you can overlook Kurt Cignetti at your own peril. We'll see how that goes for you.
Smoke him through the filter, bud.
For a month, man. He's making me look like an idiot.
The
so
Sig 10, baby.
I know, picking teams to cover against them. So I'm whiffing on them left and right. I'm going to die on that hill, though. Somebody's going to get them one of these weeks.
Through the filter, bud.
Andy Dirt Johnson, you hear him Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. on Dirt and Sprague. Of course, the Ducks Game Day show on Saturdays as well. Dirt, thanks for joining us, and we will be listening on Monday.
All right, boys.
That is Andy Dirt Johnson. Always good to get him weighing in. We've got a couple things we still need to get to, including the greatest catch of the college football season that no one will remember because it didn't count. We'll get to that as well as some other leftovers from a dominant Oregon win, 38-17 at the Big House over Michigan. Number 1 Oregon rolls to 9-0, but we'll first toss it over to Schultze with the Game Day weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your Game Day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Appreciate that, Buck. 52 right now in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 46. Tomorrow, a high of 56. It's going to be in the 50s and cloudy in Eugene when Oregon hosts Maryland next weekend.
Drive home in the Audi SUV of your dreams at Audi Wilsonville.
Talk about James with a touchdown run.
This is the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz here with you. And a lot being made of the Tez Johnson injury today, and rightly so. Maybe the most productive player on the offensive side of the ball besides Dylan Gabriel. Tez Johnson goes down with an apparent shoulder injury early in the game. But I feel like we all here, and the people we've talked to tonight, feel really solid about the group that we have picking up the slack there. One of those players picking up the slack, who picked up the slack early in this game, was Evan Stewart. He made a big, well, he got credit for a big touchdown catch early in this one, but a funny game for Evan Stewart because he made the most incredible one-handed back of the end zone, make Garrett Wilson impressed type catch that did not count because of an illegal man downfield, and yet he gets credit for a touchdown today for making what looked like a great catch that definitely hit the turf.
How does this keep happening? Like, this happened in the NFL with the Seahawks and, was it the Seahawks and 49ers on Thursday night?
Yeah,
How do we have better angles and can get those angles quicker as TV viewers than they can at the Big Ten offices? How does this happen? That should have been, like, look, as someone who is joining Schultz, he is an Oregon 14.5 better.
I'm literally
very happy about the catch and that it counting, but I feel like the more and more that I watch college football this year, and it's not just the Big Ten, but officiating's been down across the board in college football.
I mean, it makes up for that call that Oregon didn't get against Ohio State, right? With the pick that should have been a pick but wasn't.
Yeah, at least. I mean,
I feel like it's a more worrisome trend.
Yeah, I hear that.
That's the thing is, especially on touchdowns, which are, I thought every touchdown got reviewed. Maybe that's just an NFL thing, but
they do.
I don't get how one look at that wouldn't, one of the right looks at that wouldn't have instantly made Oregon run another play.
And it's obvious, too. It was right. And I mean, if you really think about it, that's a huge play. That was third down. Does Oregon go for it, or does Oregon kick a field goal there? Like, that's the difference between literally going up 7-0 and 3-0. If you're up 7-0, Michigan has to change a little bit so that they make sure they get points on their next drive. If you go up 3-0, does Michigan really even have to change their game plan? They might continue to go through their scripted plays.
Yeah.
So it is a big deal, and if I was a Michigan fan, I'd be upset.
Now we've talked about the Tez Johnson injury, the Marcus Harper injury. If you're just joining us, Tez Johnson, a shoulder injury. He left the game, came back in street clothes with a sling, and then Marcus Harper late in the game had something happen to his knee. He had ice on that. We don't have a status report on either of those. But one really positive thing that happened today is we got the return of both Jordan Birch and Terrence Ferguson. Birch contributing 3 tackles, Ferguson catching a couple balls, and then also nearly having another at the sideline. He couldn't get his foot in, but really good to get those guys back for the stretch run, especially as you're losing a couple other key players.
Yeah. With Jordan Birch, I was actually pretty happy with how he looked. I know that he didn't get after the passer. Like, you're bringing Jordan Birch back. That's your premier defensive end. He was getting after the passer. He had 5 sacks before he gets hurt. He then misses 3 games. You get him back. You want him to come in and have a sack right away. I didn't expect that, especially I know that they kind of kept it under lock and key. He had a lower leg injury.
Yeah.
So how explosive is he going to be? You brought him back for the Michigan game. Hopefully that allows him to knock the rust off. I don't expect to see Jordan Birch return to early season form until about the Wisconsin game, for me personally. So to see him out there, I think that's more of a good thing for the morale of everyone and to get him ready. But the truth of the matter is he needs to be ready by the time you get ready to go on your final run of UW, hopefully a Big Ten championship game, and then the playoffs.
Yeah.
When it came to Terrence Ferguson, I clearly don't understand how an appendectomy works. Like, I knew that he was going to miss.
I've had one, man. It's I'm stunned that.
How is that not a season ender?
Oh, so
they removed an organ from your body.
Yeah,
and you came out and played.
It's really small. I mean, having had one, like I couldn't do anything for like 3 or 4 days afterwards. But then, like, I didn't think about doing anything athletic for like a month,
right?
Maybe. And I'm like, but this guy, and it's in your abdomen, so it's
yes.
like, I mean, you're gonna get hit there. It's like, and I can't imagine that's comfortable. So I don't know what kind of meds they've got for him, but I'm very impressed at the essential warrior status of Ferguson. Not because I didn't think he was already a badass. He's an absolute beast. But
and he was awesome in this game. Both of his catches were huge for you. They were in big moments.
Yep.
He almost scores. But my question again is like, I'm not a doctor. I was really bad at the science classes that I took at Central, but when Gary Payton II had an owie in his core, he was out for months. When Jadeveon Clowney tore a muscle in his core, he was out for months. Quinn Ewers tore his oblique. And I understand that these are muscles, but he literally had an organ taken out of him. How are you able to return in 2 games? And then contribute at a high level like Terrence Ferguson is doing. The guy he's a warrior.
Yeah, I'm just looking online. According to Dr. Google, it says full recovery usually takes about 6 weeks from a removed appendix. I get that these guys are top of the line
and
athletes,
built different and all that, but still, even if it's minimally invasive, it's an invasive procedure.
Maybe it's because he's so young. Maybe because he's 22 and in such good shape. Just with a couple of who knows what they're giving him.
Wow.
Maybe all of that combined.
Maybe it's magical ginger healing powers. I don't know.
He's
ginger healing powers.
Where are those? Wait a minute. I want those.
I mean,
I'm a ginger.
Yeah, my brother is too. It's all in the family, man.
Wait a minute.
But one more thing that I wanted to get to before we moved on, and I'm glad that those guys are back and contributing. I have questions about I don't want to say game flow, but just your perspective as adjustments coming through a football game, because I saw this stat that was flashed up during the game that Oregon's distribution of scoring throughout the season is kind of unique. They had, going into today, 55 first quarter points, 100 second quarter points, 3 third quarter points, and 40 fourth quarter points. So and that, I mean, a couple games you don't score in the third, whatever, but it feels like, is there an issue there? And what are most teams doing at the half? What kind of adjustments would you expect to be made? And what could be some of the reasons why things maybe aren't just quite clicking offensively coming out of the half?
Well, and that's where it gets weird, because how many times did you have games that were over, in the third quarter?
Every game is different.
Like, if you go back and you really think about the UCLA game,
I mean,
they were
Michigan
done.
State, Purdue, and UCLA were all over.
They didn't care. It was over. They're just trying to get out of there. Ohio State, you did struggle a little bit in the third quarter. That might be where your points come from. And then in this game, against Illinois, kind of same idea. You're up big. It's over. Get out. Michigan, it worries me a little bit, because last year you were so good at that middle 8. It felt like every single game you would get a touchdown in the final 4 minutes of the first half, and you get a touchdown in the first 4 minutes of the second half. And that can lead to big swings in games. But this year it just doesn't feel like Oregon does that. And defensively, it feels like that's when they give up their touchdowns. What people get confused about halftime is they think that coaches immediately come in and just spend 15 minutes talking with the players. That's not what happens. All the coaches get together, they talk with themselves, and then you get about 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how quick you are, going through, hey, we talked with the other coaches, we want to make these changes. Now we're talking to the players. Because you also have to have coaches that are on the field that are explaining what the players are seeing, talking to the coaches that are upstairs, because they're not having that direct line. So it takes a little bit, and you're only able to make little minor changes. And most of the time, it's not even necessarily a scheme thing, although it is from time to time. It's a lot of like, hey, instead of outside zone, we like more inside zone based on how they're playing. Or, hey, this matchup's better for us to attack out of twins than it is to attack out of trips. And so you go from having a more expanded playbook into a more condensed one, but one that better accentuates your strengths.
Okay.
So I don't know why there is such a big difference, because it's not a different coaching staff. For the most part, it's not different players. Why they struggle so much in the third quarter? Could it be because they've had so many games that were blowouts and they were kind of done? Maybe. But at the same time, you also have had multiple games that were close in the third quarter, and you haven't done a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I piggyback on that and just maybe ask, like, if Michigan scripted like an entire series for that touchdown? It was like a 75-yard drive, and it kind of making me wonder, like, all right, so did they just see what Oregon's giving them as a look, and then
it was pretty methodical.
You're saying they don't have more than 15, 20 minutes, but it's like, did they plan a whole series to start that second half? Because it looked, you're right, it was very methodical.
A whole series seems bold. Especially coming out of the half. Now, to start a game, most offensive coordinators have anywhere between 10 to 15 scripted out plays. There are some coordinators that do like to script out plays coming out of halftime, especially offensive coordinators. Now, is that what Sherrone Moore and that Michigan offense does? I don't know. I haven't heard of them doing that. But again, that's a methodical drive. What did they get back to? They got back to running the football with Edwards and Mullings, and then finding ways to find Loveland open. Loveland was getting open when he was basically coming across the middle of that Oregon zone at about 8 to 12 yards. That's when you saw him at his most effective, and it was coming off of play action pass because they were able to run the football. I wouldn't come out here and be like they gashed you, but it was effective enough that Oregon had to be wary of it. And so because of their ability to at least get 3 and 4 yards on their run plays, it opened up some of those passes. So I wouldn't necessarily say scripted, but I would say that Michigan's offensive staff came together and said, hey, we like these run plays. We like these pass plays off these run plays. So let's set this pass play up with these runs, and let's hope that we can get a drive going and get one sustained.
So you kind of had the framework of what you want to do without
you have the concepts of a plan.
You have the concepts of a plan.
You have the concepts of a plan.
Need to get to not the most graceful navigating of this question, because I should have asked you right after your previous response, but I want to double back to the Jordan Burch thing for a second, because I didn't mean for that to sound as though, he only got 3 tackles, but I am interested because I know that the box score doesn't always reflect the effectiveness of what the line does. I know that you said earlier today you thought that maybe you wanted to see some more one-on-one wins from the defensive line.
Yeah.
But one of the things I feel like I'm seeing as a trend, and this is just purely based on feel, I don't have numbers or analytics to back this up, but it feels like Oregon's line is constantly making other teams uncomfortable. Even if they're not getting home, it seems like quarterbacks have less plays or less time to let plays develop or to get through their progressions, and that Oregon just seems to be rushing people. And I don't mean physically rushing, but rushing on the clock, like making them hurry more than they want to. Do you get that sense? And can you essentially give the team credit for being effective when you don't see it reflected in the numbers?
Yeah, well, and to be fair with the numbers when it comes to sacks, you didn't have any sacks, but again, how many passes did Davis Warren complete? Like, he was just barely over 50%, right? And the only reason he was over 50% is because he was throwing to one guy who's an absolute matchup nightmare, and that's against any team in the country. So there's part of that. I would be interested to see, because right now on the sheet that I have pulled up, I don't get to see how many hurries. I agree with you. I felt like they were in the backfield. Davis Warren was able to move better than I thought he would be able to, and there were a lot of times where there was no one open downfield, and that Oregon pass rush was able to make him uncomfortable enough where he just had to throw the football away. Now, for me, when I'm talking about one-on-one pass rush wins, there were a lot of times where Mateo Uyunglele, I felt like even Jordan Burch a couple times, but Tatum Tuioti, they were able to get some separation from the O-lineman, but not complete. And what I mean by that is, like, you have an arm on the offensive lineman and an arm free. So one arm is trying to get to the quarterback, but you're still, basically the O-lineman has control of about half of your body. And so you see a lot of broken tackles, or you see the ability of a quarterback to throw the football away in that spot. Now, I don't necessarily expect Jordan Burch, especially against a really good Michigan O-line team. Like, Michigan is still going to have one of the best O-lines in the country. That's how that team was built, and they were built through high school, and so they're going to continue to have a really good offensive line for years to come. But I would have liked to have seen more. The way I would describe it would be like when Mateo Uyunglele they were playing Boise State, he just throws a rip move in. The O-lineman is left looking around, where's my guy? And he's making an easy sack on the quarterback because there's no one within 2 feet of him, right? It felt like even in blitzing situations for Bryce Betcher or for Justin Jacobs in this one, it felt like they'd run through the running back, but when they ran through the running back, they'd also fall over.
Yeah.
and then they'd have to get themselves back up, and by then Davis Warren has gotten away, where in previous weeks you run through the running back there, you keep your feet, and you still make the sack.
Sure.
So it just felt like they weren't able to win completely. There were a lot of half wins, and when you have a lot of half wins, that doesn't necessarily lead to a lot of sacks. That can still lead to a lot of pressures and making people uncomfortable, but it doesn't necessarily lead to getting the quarterback on the ground.
A lot of performances to like today along that defensive line. A lot of performances to like today across the board. We'll let Big Will weigh in with the Bellagio's very best player of the game. That's coming up next on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. But first, we'll toss it over to Schulte, who has the weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery online at victoricos.com.
Thanks, Buck. 52 right now in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 46. Tomorrow, cloudy and a high of 56. It's going to be in the 50s with clouds in the sky in Eugene when Oregon hosts Maryland next weekend.
Auto accident? Worried about your deductible? Don't. Before you file a claim, call Leif's Auto Collision Centers. Leif's unique program.
Pacific Office Automation Post-Game Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan.
Throws, end zone, caught, touchdown. Trayshawn Holden with his 7th touchdown reception of the year.
It's time for the Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game. Pay attention. Our expert panel will select the very best player of the game. And when you hear the Text to Win cue in the noon hour of Monday's Danny and Dusty Show, you could win a free pizza from Bellagio's.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. You heard the imaging. It is that time for our Bellagio's Pizza Very Best Player of the Game. And that's Will's job, at least to come up with it. I will pay off the sponsorship. But Will, lots of good candidates today from the quarterback position, a number of receivers stepping up with Tez out. Defensively, a whole cast of characters you could point to. But who is today's Bellagio's very best player of the game?
It has to be the one guy coming from the doghouse trying to get himself back into the penthouse, and that's Trayshawn Holden. I mean, 6 catches, 149 yards. The only thing he didn't do was find the end zone. He had a long of 47. That's such a huge job that he did because people don't understand that he was the 4th wide receiver in this game. He is trying to earn back trust, not just in his teammates, but in the coaching staff and in everyone that plays for the organization, right? Like, he has to earn it back. He made one of the bigger mistakes in program history that could have cost them a game. He's that dynamic. You need him to play and play an entire game, and you can't get suspended against Ohio State. He has, his punishment that it gets dealt with inside of the program, and instead of just melting down, being, I messed up, I'll never be able to recover, I'm never going to play again, and just turning into, a mental head case, he says, you know what? I'm going to take my punishment. I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to put myself in a position that when I get an opportunity again, I am going to make the most of it. And that's exactly what he did against Michigan. Oregon does not win this game. At least they do not win this game as convincingly as they did tonight without Trayshawn Holden. And you know what? I commend the young man. That is awesome. It is not easy to have that big of a mistake get caught on national TV where everyone except for probably your mother is dumping on the decision that you made in that moment, and then 2-3 weeks later come back and be the most important player. Trayshawn Holden, Bellagio's, give him a pizza.
It's a great story, and you love to see sports work in this way, where a second chance is given, the player works his way back. There was clearly a punishment that was served, and it doesn't derail the season, and it can turn into a positive result, even though it was a nasty incident. And so Trayshawn Holden, a great pick there. Just from a football standpoint, Will, if we're not looking at Tez Johnson being in the mix, at least for, I would imagine, the next 2 weeks. And that's pure speculation on my behalf, but the kid was in street clothes immediately in a sling. I think he's definitely not playing next week, and he's probably not playing the week after that. We'll find out more on that. But with the receivers that Oregon or Dylan Gabriel will have at his disposal, what do they all do differently? What are their strengths? And I'm talking specifically about Holden, Stewart, and now Justice Lowe, who's put himself in the mix.
Stewart has shown that he can get by any corner. If he's ever in one-on-one coverage, I almost feel like you immediately switch his hot route to a go. Whatever he's going to do, he can outrun anyone. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't run the other routes in the route tree, but it feels like whenever there is a big play on the outside where it's involving, 30 yards of air, what I'm talking about there is Dylan Gabriel's throwing the ball 30 yards in the air, not, hey, it's a dump off and then Tez Johnson makes a couple guys miss. I feel like it's because of what Evan Stewart is doing. Now, when you look at Trayshawn Holden, the funny thing is like Schultz talked about, he's one of the bigger guys, but I feel like he's at his best in the middle of the field, whether that is on the outside or in the slot. He just, for whatever reason, is able to find the holes in the zone in the middle of the field, and then he runs such crisp routes that if he is in man coverage, he'll create enough separation that Dylan Gabriel can find him, and he becomes your I would always call it the Doug Baldwin wide receiver, where you're probably not going to have the big 80-yard touchdown. You might have a couple big 60, 70-yard catches, right? But for the most part, he's going to be somewhere between 10 to 15 on most of his catches. Mm-hmm. He might get it to 20 to 25, depending on if he can break a tackle or two, but he's going to catch the ball in the middle of the field. And then what Justice Lowe is doing, it's a slightly lesser version of what Tez can do, catching the ball out of the backfield in those. Basically, they're run plays, but they're bubble screens, they're tunnel screens because they get the ball out of Dylan Gabriel's hands so quick, but it gets the ball to one of your playmakers and weapons on the outside. And I want to make it clear that I say a slightly lesser version because the only reason it's lesser is because he hasn't seen every possible scenario. Like Tez Johnson is an All-American. When I look at Justice Lowe, he's a guy that could be an All-American in a year or two once he gets a little bit older. He is making guys miss right now. And yeah, he's not going to have the big play, but he's going to finish the game with 4 or 5 catches. He's going to get 6 to 8 yards on all of them, and they're going to be on key first downs where he sets you up for second and manageable and gives you an opportunity to take a big shot on second down. Or it's on a 3rd and short and you have an RPO going and, hey, they took away the run. Here's our pass option, and it's Justice Lowe. I'm very impressed with all 3 of these wide receivers. That being said, you need Tez back as soon as possible.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be the first player to be in a sling and come back within a week or two.
Yeah.
Just what they can do medically. And I mean, look, there might be some special ginger superpowers, but with a lot of those football players, for whatever reason, they all seem to be really, really tough. And they come back from injuries a lot faster than maybe a normal person.
Can I add, too, that Kenyon Sadiq, I think, would be a perfect candidate. He's like 20, 30 pounds heavier, than like a traditional slot wide receiver.
I love it.
Yeah, he's 6'3", just like Trayshawn Holden is. I feel like with his speed and athleticism, he can fit that slot and get that middle gain that you guys are talking about in lieu of Tez being gone.
They like using him on the screens, too. That's what I've noticed a lot, and it's because he's quick. Not quite as quick as like a Tez or a Justice Lowe, but he's quick when he gets the football, but then he's strong enough that he runs people over. So I wouldn't be shocked if he got some of the load too on those screens.
Well, even after Oregon wins, Dan Lanning likes to take his team to the doctor, see what's wrong, what needs to improve. We heard Dirt Johnson say that there's not really much you can put your finger on, but we will find something. What is Oregon going to find out? What will be diagnosed when they go to the doctor? We will ask Will Ortner, MD, coming up next on the other side of the break. But first, Schulte has the Ducks game day weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online. Pick up or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. 51 and some light rain in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 46. Tomorrow, cloudy and a high of 56. It'll be in the 50s and cloudy in Eugene when Oregon hosts Maryland next weekend.
Hello, sports fans, and welcome to
Prime Time with Isaac and Sue.
There are big
38-17, number one in the country, improves to 9-0 after defeating the reigning national champions in the Big House. Someone pointed out, and it was part of our, actually, you know what? This is the perfect time to do that once again. Why don't we hit our Ducks Game Day secret score?
Ducks Game Day secret score.
Roundabout way of getting there, but the Ducks Game Day secret score is 2. That's the total number of penalties that the Oregon Ducks had today in front of 110,000 people. I don't care how people can poo-poo that it's not very loud in there or whatever. You go on the road in front of 110,000 and you only have 2 penalties all day. You've done something right. Don't need to remember why the number is 2. Just remember that the number is 2. And when you hear that cue to call in the 7 a.m. hour of Mondays at Dirt and Sprague, text in the number 2 and you could win the $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market. It's more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. One of the cleanest games from the Oregon Ducks this season as far as the penalties, for sure. There are some things that have reared their head every week or so. It seems like there's something else. I know you were having an issue, Will, recently with some of the Dylan Gabriel interceptions that kept popping up. Not a lot from this game to really nitpick, but I know, and Schultze, I don't mean this as an insult, but you've always got something that bothered you from the game. What do you have today? Is there any grievances, things that when Dan Lanning says we're going to the doctor, this has to be better? What do you think Oregon needs to do better in the next 3 weeks to close out the regular season?
Honestly, I'm pretty hard pressed today because there was, like, when I'm looking at games previous and I'm looking at missed tackles at the line and then a running back able to go 5-6 more yards and extend the play on you, there really wasn't much of that today for Oregon. It seemed like they were able to get that battle one up front most of the game. If you had to ask me where am I wondering the Ducks, could they be better or are they lacking in something? I think it's still the secondary. I understand what you all were saying in the last hour about their tight end just being amazing. Colston Loveland is their top target. He's their only target. He is going to get out and he's going to catch some balls. However, they don't have that talented of a quarterback. I don't think Davis Warren's that good. And really, when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. So I want to see Oregon's, I get, once again, very talented wide receiver. Oregon's facing them all throughout the year on different teams, though they faced off against 2 really good ones for Ohio State and were able to handle them. I just want to see a better effort from the secondary against guys that I feel like you should be beating. And I guess there's many ways to go about that, but really when you look at today and you look at one guy getting so many yards, that's really the only thing I think I could have a problem with.
Fair enough. Will, what about you? When you think, when Dan Lanning evaluates the tape, evaluates the game, what are the areas that he's going to want to say that wasn't quite good enough, we need to be better there?
I think you need to do a better job of stopping the off-tackle runs. Donovan Edwards, he's like the only one, he's the only one aside from Loveland who really looked good. I mean, 10 carries for 52 yards. That's 5.2 a carry, but he was attacking you off tackle. Like, they kept trying to get Mullings on the edge, and that just wasn't working. They couldn't get Orji to the edge. Anything that was run east and west, Oregon got to. When Michigan ran north and south, especially off tackle, I felt like they did a better job, whether it was with a pulling guard doing some sort of trap or whether it was just an inside zone, or I guess I should say a mid zone where they're attacking that tackle spot. That's where I felt like they had success. And then I don't disagree with you, Schultze. They need to do a better job of shoring up the middle of the field. Like, there is something to be said. Yes, he is a very good tight end. Yes, he is one of the best tight ends in the country. And yes, he is going to get some stats in games when you play against Michigan. He should not have half of the yardage, and when he has half of the yardage, it's a 112 yard performance.
And against the 12th best passing defense in the country in Oregon as well.
I don't disagree. Like, he's going to have plays. Would it shock me if he had 3 or 4 catches for 60 yards? Yes. 112 seems a bit excessive to me. So, yes, I do agree with locking that down. And the best way to lock that down would be to get a better pass rush and to win more one-on-one battles to alleviate some of that pressure that you were putting on your secondary. So I do think with the yardage that he got, it wasn't just on the secondary. It was on the entire defense as a whole.
I wish this weren't the case, and I'm not really sure, like, I can put my finger on it being one thing, but I've got some slight concerns about special teams in general. Just, it feels like every game it feels like there's something that you're like, that like it could be a pulled extra point. It could be today there was an awful punt that like kept Michigan got the ball
at the 50
in Oregon, basically in Oregon territory. I know Tez is a dominant playmaker, but when he goes out, the guy who takes his job coughs it up the first touch that he gets in that position. And it's not to call any one person out. These were three very different specific things, but it just feels like for as consistent and as balanced and as competent and capable as the team is across the board, anytime there's a special teams play, I kind of hold my breath a little bit.
Yeah. My question about that is why wasn't it Evan Stewart to begin with? Like in my
I don't know. Yeah.
Wasn't there a point in time too where Evan Stewart was the punt returner?
Yeah, he had returned a couple earlier in the year.
Like
I don't know the answer to that.
No offense to the freshman. I would go to Stewart there, man. Like that's a big time spot in a historic college football place to take your first punt return. I mean, I'd even be okay if you put Lamar back there or you put Whittington back there. Put someone back there that has shown more experience in the return game, especially after Tez gets hurt. Like if you went into it as him starting, maybe I could get behind that. But Tez gets hurt, go with an experienced guy.
I would think it's maybe the belief that Dan Lanning and the coaching staff has in their depth chart, right? We've been talking about, hey, Oregon's 2 and 3 deep, and they've got starters and they've got second guys, behind them that are all 4 and 5 stars.
We've got guys that are ready to take reps. Here's one that's available.
And that means that freshmen can make an impact as well. Are they starters? Are they getting all the plays? No, but you want to give guys opportunities, and maybe that was just a point where they're like, hey, it's a good spot for him to get an opportunity, and unfortunately, Pelham didn't cash in.
Yeah, and it's one of those deals where if he still has his red shirt, I'm not sure if he does or doesn't. We can figure that out pretty easily. But, you've got 4 games to play, and we haven't seen a lot of him this year. So, yeah, if that was a spot to try to give him an opportunity because Tez was down, I don't blame the coaching staff for that. And I think it shows confidence in your individual players, the ones that did mess up, and also shows the confidence in the rest of your team that they can account for and make up for some of those mistakes.
So, I quick research. That's his first play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought this was at least his first touch of the season.
But
I didn't know if he played on any other
That's his first play.
There's a reason that he's out there in that spot. He was a two-way player in high school. I'm not saying he's going to be Travis Hunter, but the Ducks coaching staff obviously believes he has that skill.
And he clearly had earned the right to take that kick. And it was clear that he was just trying to make a play, and sometimes those things happen, and I'm not here to dump on an 18-year-old. That's not what I want to do.
And he got smoked in the side of the head pretty good.
He got hit pretty hard.
He had a legit complaint because that was crown of the helmet to his helmet. 100%.
And I'm not saying that I needed a flag to come out, but I guess I understand why the ball came out because he got his belt.
He got smacked, man. He got
good.
smacked, and it should have been a penalty, but officiating hasn't been great, and you can't put the ball in their hand or the call in their hand in that situation. I think I would have went a little more experienced than with the youngster, but clearly he had earned it.
Can I wrap this up with one thing that I don't think the Ducks need to visit to the doctor for? That is Dan Lanning's attack mode in the last 20 seconds of the game. That useless touchdown, really to do nothing other than
style points
to cover the score and to add style points for the national media to talk about. Thank you, Dan Lanning. Don't ever do what I did. I kissed bankroll management goodbye, put my entire load of my money in my Bovada account onto
responsibly.
Responsibly, because I had it to lose on Oregon's cover today, and thank God that hit. Thank you, Dan Lanning. I love you. Don't change a thing about that end-of-game approach.
No coach could ever say that this is a thing, but there are some coaches who are more notorious than others for trying to cover the spread for their team and their fans. And I have a buddy who is a longtime Alabama fan, who grew up in the area, whole family went there, and he was convinced that Nick Saban for years was like, I know how many fans bet on our team, and I'm going to try to send them home with money. And James Franklin is one of those guys. I think Billy Napier is one of those guys. They can't really say it outwardly, but their decisions over the course of their career indicate they know the spread and they care, at least from the standpoint of trying to get their fans paid, which is
Franklin at Penn State.
Yeah,
totally. He 100% does.
That just blew my mind, and I love it.
But Schulte brought up Travis Hunter, not because Ryan Pelham is him or is going to be him, but Travis Hunter now squarely in the mix of the Heisman Trophy conversation. We'll talk about that, where Dylan Gabriel fits in, as well as what's going on in the top 25 today. We mentioned this a little bit earlier, but who are you scared of? Who do you not want to play? That team or that list seems to be getting smaller by the week. We'll take you around the top 25, and we'll do all of that coming up next on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. But first, we'll toss it over to Schultz, who has the Ducks game day weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. 51 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 46 tomorrow. Cloudy, a high of 56. It'll be in the 50s with clouds in Eugene when Oregon hosts Maryland next weekend.
Your business needs a network it can count on.
The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Well, your number one Oregon Ducks winners, 38-17. They improved to 9-0. And I got news for you boys. They're going to be number one again this week because, well, they took care of business. But additionally, some of the rest of the top 25 looking a little bit shaky this week. Now, Ohio State takes care of business. They go on the road, tough environment, Penn State, but they still win by a touchdown and frankly might have been more convincing than that.
At the same time, though, I didn't come out of that game being like, wow, Ohio State's really improved. I didn't think they were bad. They also, the decision to have your third string left tackle. Now, I understand that he's an All-American left guard and that he's going to be a high draft pick, but the decision to leave him one-on-one with Abdul Carter all game was moronic. Carter had 2 sacks. He probably should have had 3 or 4. The only reason he didn't have those is, one, because Will Howard could move, but also because they were getting away with murder when it came to holding, and that's an offensive lineman saying that, so you know the dude was just tackling him at that side. When I watched that game, yes, it was Ohio State won by 7. It felt like they won closer to like 14, but at the same time, I didn't come out of that game going, Oregon should be more fearful of Ohio State than they were before. I honestly kind of came out of that one going, Ohio State might have taken half a step back, and
Oregon could go do it again.
Penn State is fake. They're not frauds. They're going to make the playoffs. They would beat most good teams.
Honestly, for them,
they're not very good.
For them, losing by 1 score and not making the Big Ten championship game could be the best thing that happens to them, because they could run the table, finish the season 11-1, not have to get their butts kicked in a Big Ten championship game either by an Oregon or an Ohio State or an Indiana, and then just kind of coast into a nice little playoff seed and see what you got there. But
100%.
But their offense was not impressive. I mean, their defense can still play, and they did a really nice job containing Ohio State for a lot of the game. But their offense just didn't do anything to inspire.
Their defense, for me, their defense put up as many points as their offense did. More if you're going to give them the PAT as well, but. The defense is what kept them in that football game. The offense was horrific. Aller went back to bad Aller from last year. Like Drew Aller, I felt like he had taken a step forward. Yeah, he had a bunch of turnovers against USC, but he also made a bunch of big plays that got them back into that football game and got them the win. He was taking more risks with the ball, but it felt like he was at least converting on more of the risks that he was taking. And then in this game, there were no risks taken at all. And how do you not get the ball to your tight end more? Like, he had 4 or 5 touches in that game only. Against USC, you just mashed that button. And I understand that Ohio State did a good job of, locking him down in different coverages, and they have Caleb Downs, and no one else in the country does that can guard a tight end like that. But at the same time, it's 4th and goal. That ball has to go to your best playmaker, and he's your best playmaker. How does he not touch the football there?
The other thing that we heard was that with Aller getting hurt previously and Bo Pabula getting some action, we heard that they were going to see both quarterbacks today, and he had 1 carry and 1 pass attempt. And I thought that was going to be an opportunity to use RPO, to use the run a little more, to just stress the Ohio State defense and what they have to be prepared for, and that really wasn't an element. James Franklin's come out today and say this is all on me, but yeah, no kidding, buddy. You're like 1-13 against the top 10 now. So it's same old Penn State essentially. They can beat everybody except for Ohio State or Michigan, and now probably Oregon as well.
Right.
But we talk a lot about the teams that Oregon could face, the teams that could be there in the conversation for top playoff seeds that you might find in a playoff. So some other notable scores from the day, and maybe not even scores, but just how the games went. Miami, once again, looking fallible. Yes, they won by 22 points, so it seems like a lot, but they were losing to Duke, who was a 21-point underdog most of that game, or for great spots of that game.
Yeah.
So that covers 3, 4, and 5. And then number 2, Georgia, was going down to the wire with Florida. They were favored by Georgia was favored by 14.5 in that one. They end up scoring the final 2 touchdowns of that game to make it a 2-touchdown game, but Florida gave them everything they could handle. You look around the top 5 outside of Oregon, which one of those teams right now scares you the most? Who would you not want to see the most of Georgia, Penn State, Ohio State, and Miami?
Well, I mean, it has to be Georgia, because we've seen what Georgia can be at their peak. We saw them against Clemson. We saw them against Texas. When that defensive line is at 100% strength and they can just go, they can get after teams. And they made Quinn Ewers, a quarterback who has played in a lot of hostile environments against a lot of really good teams, they made him look completely pedestrian. Like, he had no idea what he was seeing, and he got benched in that game, and he should have been benched. And that was going up against, if they're not the best offensive line in the country, they're top 5. everyone going into that game was how good Texas's offensive line is. They are one of the best in the country. They've gelled for years. They've worked together for years to be in this spot for this game and to dominate this game. And Georgia just worked them. Now, I think there are a lot of flaws on that Georgia team, specifically at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
And I think you could take advantage of them. But to me, the scariest team is still Georgia.
Okay, fair enough. And then after Georgia, is it one of those other 3 teams that rounds out the top 5, or is it Texas?
Honestly, I'm a little scared of Indiana.
Boy,
Kurt
Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers, they got their quarterback Rourke back today. They are now 9-0. They're 13th in the country, but they, after falling behind 10-0 to Jonathan Smith and company, win 47-10. They got things cooking in Bloomington, although today's game was in East Lansing.
Yeah, when you look at this Indiana team, like when they need to run the football, they can run the football. When you need them to pass the football with Rourke, he's looked fantastic this season. He knows how to play in big games. He knows how to win big games, and he's an experienced quarterback. So he's not going to get rattled by different things that pop up that might rattle most quarterbacks, excuse me. So when I look at that Indiana team, they give me fear. Yeah, Texas worries me, but I think Indiana is your dark horse scary team. They're the team that's hiding in the shadows truly, and they're training kind of like an anime. Like they're training right now to reach to their final form, and I'd be a little fearful of them.
And then shifting over to the Heisman Trophy race, Dylan Gabriel still very squarely in the conversation. Ashton Genty taking a step back this week. He ends up putting up decent numbers against San Diego State. He goes for 149 and 2 touchdowns, but he only had about 30 yards in the first half and needed to be fed in a blowout late in order to get that. But right now, at least on FanDuel, the live odds have Cam Ward as the favorite, plus 175, followed by Travis Hunter, now plus 250, and then Dylan Gabriel at plus 280. Then there's the drop-off to Genty, who's 5-1, and then after that, it goes all the way to 17-1 for Jackson Dart. But when you look at the top 3 guys, Ward, Hunter, Gabriel, if you're handicapping that right now, I want to know who you think would win and who do you think should win.
I think it's going to be Ward. Now, the reason I think it's going to be Ward is because he is asked to do more than what Dylan Gabriel is asked to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon, without Dylan Gabriel, would be a good team. Would they be a playoff team? No, probably not. Would they be the number 1 team in the country? Definitely not. That's not where they would be. But they would be a good quality team. This Miami team, they might be 500 if they don't have Cam Ward. Cam Ward at times makes really dumb decisions and makes dumb plays. But when he is at his peak, there is no one better than him right now in the country, just with his ability to run as well as find open wide receivers and throw. So his addition for that team in the +1 run game just opens things up for that running back duo that they have over there that have just been running over teams. And their defense is bad. They are really, really bad. They are not stopping teams right now. And
bad, not good.
That's why Duke was in that game. That's why, the easiest thing to do right now is watch Miami football games because you're like, it's probably going to be close at some point.
Yeah.
It's going to be down to the wire. So I might as well just flip on Miami and I'll see what happens. They don't blow anyone out because that defense isn't very good. So for me, it's going to be Cam Ward if everything continues the way that it has, and it should be Cam Ward. Dylan Gabriel will continue to be in the conversation because he's the best quarterback. Well, he's the only quarterback on the number 1 team, and he's played fairly well this year.
We might have some other upsets brewing this evening as Louisville is going for a 10-point lead, pending an extra point on number 11 and 6-1 Clemson. Additionally, I know that Kentucky was up 7-0 on Tennessee as well, another 6-1 team. So I know these aren't undefeateds. I know these aren't teams that are necessarily in the conversation for number 1 seeds or buys right now, although I guess you'd consider Clemson among them. But some other teams in the top 12 mix. There's a shuffle going on right now. But we need to turn the page to the University of Maryland. Do we know anything about the Terrapins? Find out next. We'll toss it over to Schulte for the Ducks game day weather. Brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online. Pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thanks, Buck. 51 with some drizzle in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 46 tomorrow, cloudy, and a high of 56. It'll be in the 50s in Eugene when Oregon hosts Maryland next weekend.
Do you owe back taxes or have unfiled tax returns? The IRS won't
Michigan for the second time, could say in a row, back-to-back, as they won in 2007 here, and now they are here in 2024 and get the victory over the Michigan Wolverines with a score of 38-17.
This is the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back. Wrapping up the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show, and clearly I'm not ready for Maryland because I have written down on my sheet here Wisconsin. They are not next.
Looking forward to Luke Fickell, are you?
You know what? What I am looking forward to, and not in a good way, is what I believe is the last real test on the Ducks schedule.
The Dairy Raid.
That is going to the Dairy Raid, going to Camp Randall, Wisconsin. In 2 weeks, I have no idea what the weather's going to be like there. It could be frigid. It could be raining sideways. It could be sleet. And, it doesn't matter. I think we saw today, and granted, Oregon still had just way more personnel. They played a cleaner game. They didn't make very many mistakes. It is hard to go and win and play your best on the road. It just is.
Yeah.
And we're going to get a game. We don't have a kickoff time yet for that one in Wisconsin. If that ends up being a night game, I think that makes things even tougher. So
I think if you get the big nooner, that's the toughest, though.
That too,
because having to travel two time zones and play a game
9 a.m. your time.
And look, they practice early at Oregon. My understanding is they practice sometime between 7 and 9. Could be wrong on that. I played for a team that practiced in the afternoon. I also played for a team that practiced in the morning. There is a difference to practicing in the morning. It is a bigger deal. It throws everything off. You're already going to get thrown off because you're traveling, and then you have to add in that everything is 2 hours earlier than what you are used to because there is a 2-hour time change. Then you throw in the fact that they could possibly play that game at 9, which would really be 7 a.m. your time. That's a lot of things going against you.
Did I read that Oregon left a day earlier for this
They
trip?
left Thursday.
That's
they
correct.
left Thursday.
Yeah. Yes.
I bet you they leave Thursday if that's what
Exactly.
would happen with Wisconsin.
Why not give you guys an extra 24 hours? I mean, at that point, I think a walkthrough at the hotel is fine. You really just keep your guys' clocks as close as you can.
Yeah, and I think with the travel, you don't. The other thing is you don't want to feel rushed getting into that game.
Yeah.
As far as you're getting off your bus, you're getting checked into wherever you're going. You are doing your walkthrough. You're still doing your meetings. You're doing your night before pregame. You push all that and make that feel rushed and like you're out of sorts. It leads to bad stuff. So I like that they're doing that. A good question from the Vancouver Ford text line, and always a way that you can engage with us here on the show. 503-864-6326. This one says Indiana might be underrated, but it's officially time to stop acting like Oregon won't win out. And Ohio State University with their left tackle can't keep up with Oregon. It's time to start talking about who Oregon will play in the second round of the college football playoff after earning a bye.
Wow.
But
Bold.
But that, I mean, the coaches, the coaching staff, the team, they're never going to do that. But we on this show have the luxury of being able to because we're not beholden to the same things that they are. If you look in that kind of whether Oregon gets a 1 or a 2 seed. I mean, right now they'd be the 1, so assuming they stayed there, they would get the winner of an 8-9 matchup. So you're looking at something like a potentially like a Penn State versus a Notre Dame, one of those teams, maybe an Alabama, maybe a Texas A&M. Of those teams that are kind of your 1-loss or maybe star 2-loss teams, which teams do you think you match up well against, or which would you not want to see?
Well, I think right now you also have to remember, you're going to be favored massively against these teams. So was Clemson against Louisville, and they're down by 10 right now.
Yep.
So was, Alabama to Vanderbilt, and they lost. Now, I'm not saying that that's what Oregon is or anything like that.
Sure.
But would it shock me at all if we went into the playoff and there wasn't a single undefeated team? No, it would not. I would still be nervous about Ohio State. I don't think that you can go into it being like, no, they lost their left tackle. We'll be just fine.
If they play them in the Big Ten championship, I'm not just rubber stamping the Ducks into the box. That's not.
They left some stuff on the table, just like you left some stuff on the table.
Yeah.
And now you're going to have to go across time zones. They're not going to have to do that. It's going to be more at their home than yours. You're not going to get the Autzen effect. So pump the brakes before you start going, oh, Ohio State is butt and we're going to be fine and we'll move on. Or if we're going to play Indiana, Cignetti isn't that good. We're going to outclass them depth-wise. Like, pump the brakes. That being said, on the teams that you could play, you're going to get the first college football playoff rankings. That comes out like Monday or Tuesday of this week. So I would take a look over there. I think that there's a decent chance that you end up playing Notre Dame, maybe. I think there's a decent chance that if it's a close game again, if you were the team that got the bye, you could possibly see Ohio State there. Whoever comes out of the SEC, it could possibly be like a Texas A&M.
Tennessee.
Although Tennessee, they haven't looked great.
No, they haven't.
I would not be super scared of them. So the more and more, I think it sucks, but you probably have to wait. You have a month of football left. Get through the next two games.
Too early to speculate.
Go into the bye week.
That's fair.
And you are probably going to be in the Big Ten championship if you take care of business. Take care of business.
What we don't have to speculate on is that next week, Oregon's got a 4 o'clock kickoff at Autzen Stadium on the Big Ten Network against, and of course, on 1080 The Fan, against Maryland. Now, Maryland, kind of an interesting team. They're 4-4. But they have not, they've only won one game in conference where they beat USC. They've got wins against UConn, Virginia on the road, Villanova, and that win against USC by 1 point. They've lost at Minnesota. They lost to Northwestern big. They got smoked by Indiana, and they lost to Michigan State by 3 as well. But they're on a bye this week. So when a team has an extra time to prepare for a number one opponent like Oregon, I'm not assuming that Maryland's going to come into Autzen and be some big threat, but what are the kinds of things that would give you concern about a team coming in with 2 weeks to prepare for you?
I would throw the kitchen sink at Oregon if I was Maryland. You're 4-4 right now. As you go through Maryland's schedule, they have Oregon, Rutgers, Iowa, Penn State. Do you see 2 for sure wins on there? I don't know if I even see 1. So if I'm Maryland, if I want to find a way to get bowl eligible, I got to find a way to steal at least 1 game. If I'm going to go up against Oregon and I have 2 weeks to prepare, I'm going to let my guys get healthy, and then I am going to have every trick play that I have in the book, and then I'm going to keep preaching to my guys, you found a way to do it against USC. And I'm not saying that USC is a better football team than Oregon, but USC was up in that football game, and they were up in the fourth quarter, and that Maryland team did not quit. You are the number 1 team in the country now. You are going to get every single team's best shot. You have to find a way to weather those blows and continue to do what you've done against Michigan State, against Illinois, and against Michigan. Get up as quick as you possibly can and get up big. So that way you force them to be one-dimensional in the passing game, and in the Big Ten, they really can't throw the football. There are not a lot of really good quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and Maryland doesn't have one of those good quarterbacks.
Well, they do not have one of those good quarterbacks, but I'm going through some of their personnel, and what they do have, and this is going to stun you, they have the player in their receiving corps with the second most receptions in the country. Ty Felton, a 6'2", 181-pound senior out of Ashburn, Virginia, has 73 catches this year. 73 catches and 900 yards. So there's one weapon that Jabbar Muhammad and company will have to look out for. I have not watched a lot of Maryland play. I know their quarterback's numbers are just average. He's got 13 touchdowns against 6 picks.
So that's the one guy that
but
they have on their
that
team.
Is their guy. So that is their Colston Loveland, if you will.
All right, I don't want to see a 150-yard day from that guy.
So go shut down Ty
Fair.
Felton, and it feels like the rest maybe should take care of itself.
Hey, the other side of this whole travel thing, we've been hearing about Oregon, and the issues with 3, 4, 5-hour flights to places like Ann Arbor. Isn't Maryland like a 6-hour flight to Eugene? I'm assuming
that's got to be one of the longest trips in the country.
That's a 6-hour flight. It sucks.
And this is their longest trip of the season. They hosted USC, so it's going to be interesting to see if they can even actually show up at all against Oregon.
Well, let's see if we have a number on this game yet. And
bet you it's about 3 scores.
I'm not seeing. Yeah, I mean it was 21-ish when it was Illinois, and that was a team that was ranked. So yeah, we'll see. I don't have it yet. That'll certainly come later in the week. But now it's time for us to go around the horn and do a couple game balls. We've already got Trayshawn Holden as our Bellagio's very best player of the game for Bellagio's Pizza. Of course, needed to remind you one more time that when you hear the cue to call during the Monday noon hour of Danny and Dusty's, when you can win that Bellagio's Pizza if you text in the Trayshawn Holden is your Bellagio's very best player of the game. But who else stands out? Schultze, who you got giving a game ball to?
Jordan James, consistent attack on the ground, was able to keep the offense moving for Oregon. Yes, Whittington did get those 2 touchdowns, in the red zone. It's kind of been what Oregon's offense really has looked like the last couple of weeks, but we really didn't talk about Jordan James today. But his ability to just keep the offense going, he had a big run. I think it was like 20, 25 yards or something like that. So one of those great chunk plays that helped Oregon be successful today. My game ball goes to Jordan James.
Will, who else are you going to go with? I know you already got Trayshawn Holden under your belt, but anybody else worthy of a game ball today?
Yeah, I would give one to Terrence Ferguson. You're coming back off of, an appendectomy, which I have learned from, I'm going to find it, Surgeon Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin the surgeon, thank you, texted in. Guess not as crazy to have come back from as I thought. So now Ferguson is less of a man than I thought earlier today, but he still had a great game. 2 catches, 34 yards. Thought he blocked well, and he's, half an inch from a touchdown? Great way to return.
Yeah, really nice game. Maybe this seems too easy. I'm going to go with Dylan Gabriel. He just continues to put together really solid games, loses a top receiver, doesn't bat an eye, and again, uses his legs to his advantage. An impressive game from him once again. So he remains a Heisman candidate. That's all for us on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. The Ducks winners over Michigan 38-17. The number 1 team in the land rolls on to 9-0. Thank you for joining us. This is 1080 The Fan. Have a great night.